Hey everyone, and welcome back to Men Can Be Anorexic. My name is Connor, and for this week's video, I'd like to tell the story of how my doctor and his staff grossly misinterpreted the cause of my weight loss. But, as always before I say more, a trigger warning for anyone going through or recovering from anorexia, just because I might say some stuff that could be triggering or upsetting, and the last thing I want to do is put anyone in a bad place. I started restricting when I got to college. After 17 years of pretty much eating as I pleased, my fear of the so-called freshman 15 grew to a point where I felt the need to make a resolution. As soon as I set foot on campus for my first semester, I was going to eat healthy, which, to me, at the time, meant cutting way back on snacks and desserts and subsisting mostly on things like oats, nuts, grains, vegetables, and chicken. As someone who can sometimes be dangerously disciplined, I was able to make this change pretty easily. By the time my first semester came to a close, walking into the dining hall and opting for a meal of brown rice, chicken breast, and broccoli had become basically second nature. As the staples of my diet shifted from Pop-Tarts and Hot Pockets to oatmeal and egg whites, I continued to run 5 or 6 days a week. It should come as no surprise then that when I paid a visit to my doctor during my first winter break, I had lost a lot of weight. Specific numbers don't matter. What matters is that this change in my body was radical enough to raise some eyebrows. Let's imagine for a second that I'm a woman, 18 years old, returning home from my first semester of college, visibly thinner than I was over the summer. Can I say for sure that the nurses at my doctor's practice would have flagged me for an eating disorder? No, I can't. But I think it's pretty likely. People, medical professionals included, are taught to associate eating disorders with young white women. I'm white, and I was young when I first started restricting. If, on top of that, I were also a woman, I would have been the perfect fit for the extremely narrow and extremely toxic anorexia archetype. But I'm not a woman. I've identified with and performed maleness my entire life. And so when I stepped on the scale at my doctor's office at the beginning of 2016 and came in at a weight well under the nurse's expectations, it didn't occur to her that I had begun to restrict. To restrict is to be feminine, and nothing about me on the surface signifies femininity. What should have initiated a conversation about restriction and compulsive exercise instead led my doctor and his staff to a very different conclusion, namely that I had type 1 diabetes. Yes, you heard that correctly. Rather than interpreting my rapid, unexpected weight loss as the beginning of a battle with anorexia, my doctor and his staff decided that I was diabetic. I believed them, of course, because 1, medical professionals are infallible, and 2, I was just as oblivious as them to the idea of male eating disorders. This outrageous misinterpretation of my weight loss sparked several months of unproductive evaluations and inconclusive blood tests. And all the while, I continued to run, restrict, and lose weight. I think that's the worst part, the detail in this story that frustrates me the most. Even as my blood tests continued to come back inconclusive and my weight continued to drop, none of the medical professionals around me stopped for a second to say, hey, maybe this kid's just exercising too much and not eating enough. It's not only frustrating because things would have been different if I were a woman. It's also frustrating because all of this foolishness took place in the context of a culture that is obsessed with weight loss. Within this culture that is obsessed with weight loss, nearly everyone knows the magical formula. More exercise plus fewer calories equals weight loss. When you think about it, the explanation for my shrinking waist could not have been less obscured. I was losing weight by doing precisely what you're told to do when you want to lose weight. It was at the beginning of 2016 that my weight loss initially came to light. And it was at the end of 2016 that I decided to go vegan, which is when things got really, really bad. At no point over the course of that year did a single medical professional talk to me about restriction or compulsive exercise. At no point over the course of that year did a single medical professional suggest that I may have been engaging in disordered behaviors. I was allowed to rapidly deteriorate, both mentally and physically, while the doctors and nurses tasked with making me better ran around like chickens with their heads cut off. In retrospect, the entire ordeal was an embarrassing display of incompetence. And to be clear, I don't think those doctors and nurses are stupid or arrogant. I think they're poorly trained. Clearly, none of them have been trained to recognize eating disorder symptoms in boys and men. There's no way to describe this other than dangerous, as anorexia takes more lives than any other mental disorder. If I had never recovered, my death would have been traceable back to those initial doctor's visits that amounted to nothing but wasted time. I'm lucky to be alive, and it's no thanks to my doctor. I think I will leave it on that note for today. As always, thank you so much for watching. Down in the description box, you'll find the phone number for the Anorexia, Nervosa, and Associated Disorders hotline, which you or anyone you know can call if you're looking for immediate help. Thank you so much, and keep your eye out for the next video.